The diner went silent when the door slammed open and 7 thugs swaggered inside, their eyes cold and hungry as plates clattered, conversations died, and fear choked the air. In the corner, a man in a navy t-shirt sat alone, his sandwich, untouched, his gaze steady. They did not notice him yet. To them, he was just another nobody. But what they did not know, what nobody in that Chicago dive could have guessed, was that the man watching them was a tomb guard, forged in the fire of duty, trained to never flinch. And in the next 5 minutes, those thugs would learn exactly what happens when you cross a soldier sworn to protect the summer sun hung high over Chicago, casting a golden glow across the bustling streets of Little Italy. It was a Saturday afternoon in 2025, and the city was alive with the hum of Life Street vendors, calling out cars honking, and the faint scent of marinara sauce drifting through the air. James Sullivan, known as Jim 2. Those who knew him stepped out of the heat and into the cool shade of Veterans Haven, a small diner tucked into a corner of the neighborhood. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, and the chatter of patrons filled his ears. Jim was 32, tall, broad-shouldered with military buzz cut and eyes carrying a quiet intensity. He wore a simple navy t-shirt, jeans, and a black baseball cap blending in with the crowd, but his ramrod straight posture gave him away as someone different. Jim was a tomb guard, one of the elite soldiers who stood watch over the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. Years of his life had been defined by precision, duty, and honor, and this trip to Chicago was his first real break in ages, a chance to breathe and feel like a civilian. Yet his instincts still scanned every corner. The diner was cozy with black and white photos of soldiers, faded American flags, and military memorabilia lining the walls. Large stars and stripes hung proudly behind the counter, flanked by a display of medals and patches. The smell of grilled meat and fresh bread mingled with the clatter plates and the low hum of conversation. Jim slid into a booth in the corner, his back to the wall. He picked up the menu, his fingers brushing against a small tomb guard badge in his pocket, when a gruff voice interrupted. "Hey, stranger, you look like you have seen a few battles." Frank Russo, one of the owners, stood there wiping his hands on a rag. In his early 60s, silver-haired with a weathered face and a left arm crooked from an old war injury. His Marine Corps tattoo peeked out from under his sleeve. Jim gave a small smile. "Just passing through, sir. Heard this place has the best Italian beef sandwich in Chicago." Frank chuckled, eyes crinkling. "Damn right we do. Maria's recipe. My wife, she will fix you something special. You military got that look about you." Jim nodded. "Sir, a bit Army." Frank's face lit up. "I was a Marine myself, Iraq, 1991. Maria was a combat nurse. Back then, this place," he gestured around, "is our way of giving back a haven for vets." Before Jim could respond, Maria Russo stepped out from the kitchen, carrying a steaming plate, her graying hair tied back and her smile bright but firm. Frank stopped bothering the customers, she teased as she set the plate before Jim. "Here's your sandwich, hon. Extra peppers. Just how we do it." "Thanks, ma'am," Jim replied, polite but reserved. He took a bite, savoring the juicy beef, tangy giardiniera, and soft bread soaked in au jus, letting himself relax until the peace was broken. Tommy the Russos' teenage grandson darted from behind the counter, pale and breathless. He whispered to Maria, whose smile instantly faded. Frank's jaw tightened. "Not today, damn it," he muttered. Jim set his sandwich down, his gaze shifting to the door. The bell jingled again, but this time harsh and aggressive. The door swung open, and 7 men entered. Their presence sucking the air from a room. The leader, Vincenzo Vinny Moretti, was impossible to miss in his sleek black suit, slick back hair, and faint scar running across his left cheek. The scar marked Vincenzo Vinny Moretti, whose cold, predatory eyes scanned the diner like a wolf choosing prey. The 6 men behind him were younger, bulkier, dressed in leather jackets and loud shirts. Their arms crossed or resting on concealed weapons. Tattoos climbed up their necks, and their smirks screamed trouble. The diner fell into silence as a family at a nearby table grabbed their children and hurried out, while an older couple in the corner shrank into their seats. Jim sat motionless, his hands resting on the table, as he watched Vinny stride to the counter, his polished shoes clicking on the linoleum. "Frank, my man," Vinny said, his voice smooth but laced with menace, "you know what day it is time to pay up." Frank's face reddened, his fists clenching as he replied, "We paid last month, Vinny. Business is slow. You are bleeding us dry." Vinny laughed sharply. "Slow? This place is packed. Do not play me, old man, you and your gimpy arm think you can stiff me." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You know what happens when you do not pay." Maria stepped forward, her voice steady but tight. "Vinny, please, we are honest people. We cannot keep doing this." Vinny's eyes flicked to her, and his smile twisted. "Honest? You are just a couple of washed-up vets running a greasy spoon. Pay up, or we will make things real messy." Jim's jaw tightened as he felt the weight of the badge in his pocket and remembered the oath he had taken as a tomb guard to honor, to protect. To never waver, this was not Arlington, but the principle was the same. These people, Frank, Maria, and the folks in the diner, deserved better than to be terrorized. One of Vinny's goons, a stocky man with a shaved head, slammed his hand on the counter. Enough talk, opened the register. Lady Maria flinched, but stood her ground. Frank stepped forward, his voice rising. You do not scares punk. I fought in Fallujah. You think I'm afraid of you, the goon laughed, pulling a baseball bat from under his jacket. Big talk for a guy with one good arm. That was at Jim, stood his chair, scraping across the floor. Every eye in the diner turned him. His voice was low and controlled, yet carried like command. That is enough. Back off. Vinny spun around, sizing Jim up, his lips curling into a sneer. Who is this guy? Some wannabe hero? Sit down, pal. Before you get hurt. Jim did not flinch, his eyes locked on Vinny's, unyielding. I said back off. You are done here. The goons laughed with a nervous edge. Vinny stepped closer, his scar twitching. You got to death. Wish, buddy, you know who I am. Jim reached into his pocket and pulled out the Tomb Guard badge, holding it so the silver glinted under the diner's lights. I am James Sullivan, Sentinel of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I have sworn to protect what is right, and what you are doing here is as wrong as it gets. The diner went dead silent. Frank's eyes widened in recognition. Maria clutched her apron as hope flickered across her face, and Tommy, hiding behind the counter, quietly pulled out his phone, hitting record. Tommy caught every moment as Vinny snorted, tossing his head back and mocking a Tomb Guard. What, you march in circles for dead guys? This is not a parade. Soldier boy, get him. Two goons lunged forward, one swinging a bat and the other pulling a knife. Jim moved like lightning, sidestepping the bat and seizing the attacker's wrist, twisting until the bat clattered to the floor. A quick jab to the solar plexus dropped the man. Gasping to his knees, the knife wielder came slashing wildly, but Jim caught his arm mid-swing, redirected the momentum, and flipped him onto his back. With a thud, the motion was clean and precise like a textbook drill. The other goons hesitated, startled by his speed. Vinny's smirk faded. What are you waiting for? Take him. 3 more charred. Jim ducked a wild punch, snatched a tray from a nearby table to block a second swing, and drove his elbow into a jaw, sending one man stumbling into a table. Another came from the side, but Jim spun low, kicking hard into the man's knee with a sickening crack. The thug collapsed, screaming. The third tried to grab Jim from behind, but Jim twisted, locking the arm and slamming him face first into the counter. The last goon, a hulking brute with a neck tattoo, charged like a bull. Jim met him head-on, grabbing his shirt and using his own momentum to hurl him over a table. Plate shattered as a man landed in a heap, groaning. The diner lay in chaos, broken dishes, overturned chairs, and 5 men down. Jim stood in the center, barely winded, his gaze locked on Vinny. The mob boss pulled a switchblade, his hands trembling. You are dead, man. You hear me? Dead. Jim stepped forward, his voice cold as steel. You are done threatening these people. Drop the knife, or I will make you. Vinny lunged, the blade flashing. Jim sidestep, grabbed his wrist, twisted until the knife fell, and drove a knee into his gut, yanking him down. Jim pinned him with a knee between his shoulder blades. Stay down. You are under arrest. Maria gasped, tears filling her eyes, while Frank's anger melted into awe. Tommy whispered in disbelief, holy crap, this guy is a legend. Jim glanced up at Maria. Ma'am, call 911. She hurried to the phone. This is Veterans Haven in Little Italy. We got situation. Mob guys attacked us. One man. Stop them, please. Hurry, sirens wailed minutes later, and 2 Chicago PD officers burst in, hands on holsters. They froze at the sight. 5 goons groaning on the floor. Vinny pinned beneath Jim, and a crowd of stunned patrons who called in the younger cop. Officer Daniels asked nervously. Jim stood, but kept a foot on Vinny's back, producing his Tomb Guard badge. James Sullivan, U.S. Army. I apprehended these men for extortion and assault. They are yours. The older cop sergeant Lopez studied the badge and gave a half-smile. Tomb Guard. Huh, hello, vacation. You are having. Tommy stepped forward with his phone. I got it all on video. Officers, everything, how they came and threatened my grandparents, and how this guy took them down. Lopez took the phone, his eyes widening as the footage played. This is Gold. Moretti has been dodging us for years. You just handed us a slam dunk. The officers cuffed Vinny and his crew, hauling them toward the squad cars. Vinny glared, spitting blood. This is not over. Hero, you will pay for this. Jim's stare was steady. Keep talking. It is not my face on the pavement. As the police hauled the mobsters away, the diner erupted in cheers. Frank clapped Jim on the shoulder, his voice thick, as he told him that he did not know how to thank him, and that it saved their place and their home. Maria hugged Jim with trembling hands and told him he was one of them, a soldier through and through. Then she reached into her apron and pulled out a small pin shaped like a Marine Corps emblem, telling him it was hers from the Gulf War, and that he had earned it. Jim took the pin with a tight throat, thanking her and saying he was just doing what was right. An older man wearing a Vietnam vet cap stood and saluted Jim, calling him a soldier, who had done them proud. The crowd outside grew as neighbors and passers-by were drawn by the sirens, and someone shouted that he was the guy who took down Moretti, which brought another wave of cheers. Jim felt the weight of their gratitude, and though he was not used to attention or praise at the tomb, his duty had always been silent and unseen here in this little diner. He had made a difference. Tommy grinned while holding his phone and said that the video would blow up online and Jim would be famous. But Jim shook his head with a faint smile and told him to keep it quiet because he was just passing through. As the police wrapped up, Jim slipped out the back to avoid the growing crowd and walked along the Chicago River where the city lights reflected on the water. The weight of the day settled on him, not from the fight, but from the faces of Frank, Maria, and the others, because he had protected something real and worth fighting for. Back at Veterans Haven, the diner buzzed with new energy as Tommy's video hit the internet that night, racking up thousands of views with headlines reading "Tomb Guard Hero Takes Down Mob." In Chicago, the diner became a local legend, a beacon for veterans and anyone seeking a taste of courage with their meal. Jim never saw the headlines as he was already on a train back to Arlington with the Tomb Guard badge back in his pocket and Maria's pin tucked beside it. As the city faded behind him, he thought of his father, a soldier who had taught him that duty was not just about standing guard, but about standing up. The Chicago skyline glowed in the distance, and Jim whispered to himself that honor was not just at the tomb, but wherever you choose to make a stand.